Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive. We like to go deep, and today we're going deep on parenting in these crazy times we're living in. We've got some fascinating excerpts from Jon Rasmussen's work. He writes a lot about families and how they're adapting, or not, to all the massive changes happening in society.
Yeah, Rasmussen's great. I've been really into his work lately.
And honestly, I think a lot of what he says is going to resonate with parents out there. You know those moments where you're like, is it just me?
Yeah.
Or am I doing something wrong?
Hmm.
Rasmussen stuff really helps reframe those questions in a whole new light.
For sure. For sure. Like, one of the first things that really struck me was his point about how parenting for most of human history was just completely different. Like, imagine your kid hitting 13 or 14, and that's basically it. Adulthood, done. There were rituals, clear shifts in responsibility, the whole 9 yards.
Whoa. So teens back then were practically running their own households.
Pretty much. And now, it's like we've stretched childhood and adolescence forever.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like this weird in-between zone.
Right. And that creates so much tension. Biologically, kids are hitting those milestones, but society's like, hold on, you've got years of school left.
It's like trying to jam a square peg in a round hole.
Exactly.
So Rasmussen has a name for this whole world turned upside down thing, right?
He calls it the Pachacuti problem.
Pachacuti?
Pachacuti. It's a reference to Andean cosmology, but the gist is that the way we live now is basically the opposite of how things worked for a very long time.
Okay, so we're living in an opposite world, and as parents, we're kind of stuck trying to navigate that. No wonder it feels so hard.
Totally. And, one of the big areas where this Pachacuti really shows up is the education system.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Like, kids are wired to be learning and exploring, but then we stick them in these classrooms where they have to sit still and memorize stuff for hours on end.
Right. And Rasmussen's argument is that schools are still largely designed to churn out factory workers, not to meet the diverse needs of kids today.
Which makes sense when you think about when our current school system was really established, during the Industrial Revolution.
Exactly. He actually shares this really powerful anecdote from his own childhood where he was so bored and advanced in school that he was almost misdiagnosed.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Just because he was ahead of the curve?
Yep. The system just didn't know what to do with him. And that's the thing, right? If a kid is struggling, it might not be them. It might be the environment.
Huge point. And I bet that leads to so much unnecessary stress for both kids and parents.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of ties into another concept. Rasmussen talks about the whitewater generation.
Whitewater generation.
Wow, bad.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So imagine a massive wave crashing on the shore, right?
Yeah.
We're in the chaotic aftermath, that churning whitewater. And kids are feeling that intensely.
I get it. Like, even if they can't articulate it, they're picking up on all this uncertainty and change in the world.
Exactly. It's like this underlying anxiety that's hard to shake. And it's not just kids, right? We're all living through this time of immense upheaval. But here's the reassuring part. Rasmussen says this too shall pass. Kids are incredibly resilient.
Okay, that's good to hear. So what's the takeaway for parents who are seeing their kids, wrestling with this whitewater feeling?
I think the big thing is to focus on helping them cope instead of trying to fix what might be a totally normal reaction to these crazy times.
So meet them where they are. Don't try to force them into some old idea of what normal should look like.
Exactly. Teach them how to name their anxieties, how to find healthy ways to channel all that energy.
Love that.
Yeah.
But it's not just the whitewater they're dealing with, is it? Rasmussen also talks about how kids are so aware of all the world's problems.
Oh, yeah. They're seeing climate change, inequality, all of it. And they're looking at us adults like, seriously, you haven't fixed this yet.
It's like they're saying, get your act together, grown-ups.
Right. And it's interesting because he ties this back to that whole 13-year-old thing we talked about earlier. Their bodies are telling them, I'm ready for more independence, but society's holding them back.
Yeah, it's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
They're feeling this urgency to make a difference, but they're also stuck in this system that treats them like kids.
Exactly. And think about how frustrating that is for a teenager. They feel capable, they're yearning for agency, but the system keeps treating them like, well, kids.
So how do we bridge that gap? Because telling a teenager to just be patient probably isn't going to cut it.
Well, Rasmussen suggests the need for modern rituals, even symbolic ones, to acknowledge this shift.
Rituals. Interesting. Like, what kind of rituals are we talking about here?
It could be anything, really. It's about finding ways to honor that inner adult that's trying to emerge. He thinks a lot of teen angst might be eased if we started recognizing that.
So it's not about giving them free rein to do whatever they want, but finding ways to respect their need for more autonomy and responsibility.
Exactly. Meeting them halfway, finding that balance. And it's important to note that every family navigates this differently. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Of course, each family has its own dynamics, its own history, its own set of challenges. So we've got this upside-down world, kids feeling the pressure of constant change, and a system that's not quite keeping up with their needs. Where do we go from here? Okay, so we've established that parenting in this Pachacootie world is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a whole different ballgame. But the good news is Rasmussen doesn't just leave us hanging with a bunch of problems and no solutions.
Nope. He's got some ideas.
He does.
Yeah.
He actually offers some pretty practical advice for how we can, navigate this new terrain.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things he talks about is the power of rituals.
Rituals. Okay, I'm curious about this.
He argues that rituals, even simple ones, can be incredibly helpful for kids in making sense of the world and their place in it, especially now when so much of life feels uncertain and chaotic.
Right. It's like everything's in flux all the time.
Exactly.
So rituals provide those anchors, those points of stability and meaning that kids can hold on to.
That's the idea.
But in a world that's become so secular and fast-paced, how do we even create meaningful rituals? It feels like those have been kind of lost in modern life.
Well, Rasmussen suggests that we need to get creative. We can invent our own rituals tailored to our own families and communities.
I like that. Like, what kind of rituals are we talking about here? Give me some examples.
They don't have to be big, elaborate things. It could be as simple as a family dinner where everyone shares what they're grateful for, or a monthly nature walk where you connect with the changing seasons.
Okay, so it's about finding those little ways to mark time, to celebrate milestones, to create a sense of connection and belonging.
Exactly, like weaving those threads of meaning into the everyday fabric of family life.
I love that analogy of weaving, because actually another tool Rasmussen highlights is storytelling.
Oh yeah, he's big on that.
He believes that stories are fundamental to how we humans understand the world, how we pass on values, how we connect with each other across generations.
It's how we make sense of things, right?
Totally. Stories have this incredible power to transport us, to make us feel things, to help us make sense of our own experiences. But with all the screens and distractions these days, are we even making time for storytelling anymore? I know I struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But that's exactly why it's more important than ever.
So how do we do it? How do we carve out that space for stories in our busy lives?
Rasmussen encourages us to be intentional about it, to make time for sharing stories with our kids, stories from our own lives, stories from our family's histories, even stories from different cultures and traditions.
It's like we're creating this rich tapestry of narratives that helps them understand who they are, where they come from, and all the possibilities that lie ahead.
And don't forget the power of listening to their stories as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like making space for them to share their experiences, their dreams, their anxieties, all of it.
Exactly. It's through those shared stories that we build those deeper connections and understanding.
It's like we're saying your story matters, your voice matters. So we've got rituals, we've got storytelling. What else? Any other big tools in Rasmussen's toolbox?
Well, he's a big advocate for nature connection.
Oh, yeah, getting kids outside.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing. Fresh air, sunshine, all that good stuff.
It's more than just that, though. Rasmussen points out that in our increasingly tech-driven world, it's easy for kids to become disconnected from the natural world.
It's true. We're so plugged into our devices that we forget about the simple joys of, playing in the dirt, climbing a tree, just feeling the sun on our skin.
Exactly. And he encourages us to get our kids outside as much as possible. Let them explore, let them get messy, let them experience that sense of awe and wonder that nature inspires.
It's not just about fun either, right? There's a whole body of research on the benefits of nature for kids' mental and physical health.
Absolutely. Nature has a way of calming the nervous system, reducing stress, boosting creativity. It's not just a nice to have, it's essential for their well-being.
Okay, so we've got rituals, storytelling, nature connection. Anything else parents should be keeping in mind as they navigate all of this? Any other big takeaways from Rasmussen's work?
Well, one of the most important things he emphasizes is that parenting is not about perfection. It's about progress.
Ooh, I like that. It takes the pressure off a bit, doesn't it?
For sure. We're all learning as we go, making mistakes, trying our best. There's no such thing as the perfect parent, and holding ourselves to that impossible standard only creates more stress and guilt.
It's so easy to get caught up in that, though, comparing ourselves to others, feeling like we're not doing enough.
It's a trap. It
Yeah.
really is. It's about letting go of that pressure and embracing the messy, beautiful, challenging journey of raising human beings.
Giving ourselves and our children grace and compassion,
Yeah.
especially when things get tough.
Exactly. So to recap, we've explored some powerful tools for navigating the Pachacudi rituals, storytelling, nature connection, and perhaps most importantly, we're reminded to let go of the pressure to be perfect and to embrace the journey, imperfections and all.
I love that. It's about shifting our perspective,
Mm.
moving away from that old rigid model of parenting and embracing a more flexible, adaptable, and compassionate approach. And recognizing that we don't have to figure it all out on our own.
Exactly.
So what other thought-provoking insights does Rasmussen offer for parents facing these unique challenges? Let's dive into that in our final part.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the how of parenting in this shifting world, the rituals, the storytelling, the importance of getting back to nature. But Rasmussen doesn't stop there. He also dives into some really profound questions about the why of it all.
Right, like what's the deeper purpose of all this?
Exactly. What kind of humans are we trying to raise? What kind of world are we preparing them for?
Big question.
Big questions, and I think Rasmussen offers some really insightful answers.
Yeah, one of the things that really resonated with me was his point about how we need to move beyond that old idea of children as, empty vessels that we need to fill with knowledge and skills.
Right. Like they're not just blank slates waiting for us to write on them. Exactly. He reminds us that they come into this world with their own unique gifts, their own perspectives, their own ways of being.
It's like they're already these complex, amazing beings from the very beginning,
And it's our job to nurture that, not try to mold them into some predetermined shape.
which I think can be a real challenge for parents
Mm.
because we have all these hopes and dreams for our kids.
Yeah.
And it's easy to fall into that trap of trying to control their path.
Oh, absolutely. But Rasmussen talks about shifting our focus from control to guidance, from conformity to empowerment. It's about creating the space for them to blossom into the fullest expression of themselves, even if that looks different from what we might have imagined.
And that requires a lot of trust,
Yeah,
right? Trusting that they have their own inner compass, their own path to follow.
so much trust. And it's not always easy. It's a lot easier to just tell them what to do, how to think, how to be. But Rasmussen argues that true parenting is about stepping back and allowing them to discover who they are, even if that means making mistakes along the way.
It's like we're not so much shaping them as we are creating the conditions for them to shape themselves.
Love that. And it's not just about them, is it? Rasmussen also talks about how parenting is a journey of self-discovery for us as adults, too.
Oh, for sure. It's
Yeah.
like they're holding up a mirror to us, showing us all our blind spots, our own unhealed wounds,
Right. It's an opportunity to grow and evolve right alongside them.
to become more patient, more compassionate, more understanding, not just as parents, but as human beings.
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of a world that's changing faster than ever before.
Right. Our kids are inheriting a planet facing some pretty daunting challenges. Climate change, social injustice, technological disruption. How do we prepare them for all that?
It feels overwhelming, honestly. Like, how do we even begin to equip them for a future that feels so uncertain?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And Rasmussen's answer is that we need to move beyond just teaching them facts and figures.
So what do we teach them?
We need to cultivate those deeper qualities that will allow them to not just survive, but thrive in this new world. Give me some specifics. What are those qualities?
Resilience, critical thinking skills, empathy, creativity, the courage to stand up for what they believe in. We need to nurture all of that.
So it's not about shielding them from the hard stuff, but about giving them the tools to navigate it, to make a
Wow.
positive difference.
Exactly. And it starts with us. We
Wow.
can't just talk about these values. We have to live them. Our kids are watching us, learning from our example. If we want them to be kind, compassionate, courageous, we have to be those things ourselves.
It's like that old saying, be the change you wish to see in the world. But it starts in our own homes,
Mhm.
in our own families.
And that's where the real power lies, I think. Because when we raise children who are grounded in those values, who are equipped to think for themselves and to act with compassion and courage, we're not just changing our own families, we're changing the world.
That's a powerful thought to end on. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Jon Rasmussen's work, I think the biggest takeaway is that parenting in these shifting times is not about following some rigid set of rules. It's about connection. It's about presence. It's about trusting ourselves and trusting our children to navigate this journey together.
Beautifully said. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, parents and children alike, figuring it out as we go, making mistakes, learning and growing along the way. And in doing so, we create a ripple effect that extends far beyond our own families and into the wider world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some food for thought, some new tools for your parenting toolbox, and most importantly, we hope it's left you feeling inspired and hopeful. Because even though the world is changing in ways we can't always predict, we believe that by raising a generation of kind, compassionate, and courageous kids, we can create a brighter future for all of us.
Absolutely. Keep those conversations going. Keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep loving those amazing kids of yours.
We'll get you next time for another deep dive of Wire.